if you're a feminist and you have like a loving heart and you value truth, then great. I mean, I've met feminists like that and they're awesome, okay? So if you go up to them and you're like, hey, men are oppressed too, they have to fight in war, they would say, you're right, that's absolutely horrible, and I 100% will support you in removing mandatory conscriptions for men, right? Like, and I'm not making this up, like this is a thing, like on the internet, like Naomi Wolf, she's always like demonized by the MRA community and the the red pill community and whatever, right? But I actually watched a video by her, and like Karen Strawn was like, yeah, well, men have to get killed in battle and all this stuff, and she is just like, okay, that is horrible, I agree with you, that's awful, and we should fix that, right? That's cool. So, however, whenever you have any kind of like popular movement, like feminism, it tends to get corrupted, right? And I think that there's also this strand of feminism I call pseudo-feminism. And this is absolutely a gynocentric movement, right? It's 100% about making men's lives worse to benefit women's lives. So let me give you a clear example in Canada, okay? So it's the law right now, and someone should fact check this because I actually haven't looked up I can't find the actual law on this, right? So it's important that we actually fact check this, right? Normally I'm very good with my citations. Here I'm being lazy, so fact check me, right? The law in Canada is that if a woman tricks you into having a kid, you have to give her half her money or raise the kid. That's insane. That's unbelievably the most gynocentric law you could ever possibly have. No, it's like you shouldn't be tricking people into these really important things. That's unbelievably dishonest and disgusting. And the law is on the side of gynocentrism, right? So let's use another example in Canadian law. Okay, this one is unbelievably unfair. In Canada, if you buy a prostitute, you can get up to 10 years in prison. Fully consenting prostitution, up to 10 years in prison. But a woman who sells herself can get nothing, zero. It's really weird, but the thing is, I always say, selfishness is a better motivator than altruism, and whenever you have like a political movement, generally like selfish people tend to take things over, right? And in my view, I think that the toxic strand of pseudo-feminism is the mainstream feminism now, because you look at what laws are actually being pushed through, they're totally gynocentric, right? Like the prostitution law, that one I do have citations for, that one I know is a fact, right? And that is 100% gynocentric. Now, one thing I want to agree with the MRAs on very strongly is that pseudo-feminism is the dominant strand of feminism, right? So authentic feminism, in my view, is dying, and I think it's being replaced by this gynocentric pseudo-feminism, right? And what's my evidence for this? Okay, school textbooks. Let's look at what they teach in school. That's important, all right? These are approved by the government, and they're written by your academics, right? These are your great intellectual thinkers who make your education. So let's look at what they actually teach, all right? So on page 61 of your grade 6 textbook, it asks students to think about fairness, equality, and rights in Athens, and gives a list to evaluate. And among this list, it includes women not being able to vote, but it doesn't include any example of male unfairness, like being forced to go to war. So on page 75, it says 16 out of 83 seats are held by women in the government of Alberta. Is it a problem that these groups are not better represented in Alberta? So this is just like intellectually really stupid, right? Because the gender of a politician doesn't reflect how much they represent that gender. This is Karen Strawn's argument, but it's absolutely right. Like, most women would want to vote for someone like Obama or Justin Trudeau, as opposed to someone like Sarah Palin, right? Now, here's where it gets like insane, all right? This is like, and when I say insane, I don't mean from an MRA perspective, I mean Pretty much anyone with a working brain would think this is crazy. Students may brainstorm a variety of ideas on how to increase the number of women seeking powerful political positions, including begin encouraging girls from a young age to strive for high and powerful positions, ensure women are encouraged and promoted in attaining high positions in their personal lives, and support voting for women candidates whenever possible. Okay. That is what I'm talking about when I say pseudo-feminism. Okay, that's bullshit. Any real feminist would say that's retarded. Let's support good people, right? Let's support good people who respect men and women, not just like give women power simply because their only virtue is being a woman, right? That's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. The wage gap is taught as a fact in school. Okay, so I don't know why this isn't like something people like to point out. I showed Karen Strawn that they teach the wage gap in school, but she never mentions that anyways. But yeah, they say as an example of how Canada is a lower quality country than people think it is, the example is the average earnings of a Canadian woman working full-time is only 71% of what a Canadian man would make working full-time. And obviously, if you think for 2 seconds, average earnings doesn't tell you that much. There's other million other variables here, like the types of jobs, raises, how hard people are working, etc., right? So to conclude it's based on discrimination is kind of absurd, right? You have to control for other variables. That's a very, very bad experiment. Just think about it from common sense. Like, talk to people who work in human resources, right? I have a bunch of friends, and they're all women, and they all work in human resources, and they say by law they have to pay men and women exactly the same, and they do make exactly the same for the same work. So I'm very, very skeptical that that's even true when you control for these variables, right? Now, in the higher levels, this is the grade 12 higher level textbooks. It says Nazism was a reaction to feminism and an attempt to restore patriarchy. So like this is a gross misrepresentation of history. And you can talk to my brother, he's a historian, right? And he knows more about the Nazis than anyone. What he says is pretty much common sense too, but what he says is a return to normal gender roles was a significant aspect of the Nazi ideology, but it certainly wasn't the main focus. Because Aryan women, they could serve in the military and hold jobs and so forth, right? It's a lot more reasonable to say Nazism was motivated by racist and ultranationalistic ideologies, right? This is why they're sending the Slavs, the Jews, and the Gypsies to the death camps, right? But not the working woman. So now, in terms of the government, I like to look at government policy too. So not just education. Let's look at the actual government policy, right? So in World War I, 48,000 men were forced to fight overseas, 24,000 on the front line, right? So we're talking a huge amount of men were conscripted, and the government is never apologizing for all these people who were forced to fight and die against their will. And for the men who were too scared to fight in battle, they were hung, right? They were literally executed. So where's the apology for that? I mean, you don't see any government ever apologizing for how badly men were treated in history, right? Okay, so this is again all Alberta corruption stuff. So in Canada, you probably have noticed all these "because I'm a girl" ads everywhere. Like, they're on Facebook, they're on Google, they're on bus stops, and they all say like really annoying like slogans. But the Canadian government spent $30 million on that company, right? And that company's spending $25 million on advertising. So that's why you see those ads everywhere, right? And this is what they claim publicly. These are their public figures, right? So the real figures, they probably spend even more than that, right? So like you have a government initiative to help only women internationally. That's a $216 million Canadian initiative to help only women. No such initiative for men. But like there obviously is very serious men's issues. For example, caning, right? In Singapore, and Malaysia, men are caned all the time, and it's a brutal form of torture, but it only happens to men. It's illegal to cane a woman. So why isn't that something that's important? I think that's a very important issue. Absolutely. So the government is spending $20 million to create a national strategy to only stop violence against women. Their logic is that women are more likely to experience the most severe forms of spousal violence, even though, according to Stats Can, men are 3 times more likely to be murdered. I think murder is a pretty severe form of violence. There's $40 million a year to promote women-led technology firms to break the glass ceiling. There's $700 million of lending to only female entrepreneurs. This one is pretty crazy. There's $23 billion. The government invested $23 billion in 1 year into childcare support, and the reason why is what's so annoying, because let's read it. In Budget 2016, the government made historic investments in people and communities, taking meaningful steps towards addressing many of the long-standing economic and social issues that particularly affect women. Then they give a statistic showing that 59% of the benefactors will be single mothers and 6% will be single fathers. 35% would be mothers and fathers mixed, right? So it's the reason they're doing it is specifically because the benefactors will be primarily women. At the federal level, $30 million a year is spent on the status of women. At the provincial level, $7 million a year is spent in just Alberta. In Ontario, the status of women gets $25 million. In just the city of Edmonton, it gets $6 million. So like every city has a status of women probably. Every province has a status of women, and then you have the federal version as well, right? So, you can see this pseudo-feminist is what's dominant politically, absolutely, right? And I think the best way to move forward, in my view, is again promote men's rights and promote authentic feminism. I think that's the way to step forward from this. If you like this video, share it, subscribe, give it a thumbs up or whatever. If you want to talk to me for whatever reason, you can add me on Facebook. I have my groups in the description, and you can ask me whatever's on your mind. I have a rule of talking to people. So anytime anyone asks me a question or whatever, I always respond no matter what, right? Even if they're a dick and they're just like, suck my dick, I still give them a response. So maybe not a nice response, but you'll get a response no matter what. So have fun with that. And I do video requests sometimes. This was a video request.